In this session, we're going to talk about security with WordPress. By itself, WordPress is a very, very secure platform. It's been tested very, very hard. However, one of the first things people usually do with WordPress is install plugins and themes. Those don't get the same rigorous testing that WordPress does. So you need to be careful where you get your plugins, where you get your themes, and if you're a developer at all, you should be reading through the code to see what's going on in there. In this session, I'm going to talk about a few things that you can do to help lock down some options. In the main directory of your WordPress install is a file called wp-config.php. And this file holds your configuration options for WordPress itself. It has your database, login, username and password, and all that kind of stuff. It's possible to call this file directly from the web. The code I have here on the screen helps prevent that. It goes into a file called .htaccess, also in your main folder of your WordPress install. It starts with a period, which is why it's called .htaccess. Here you can see how I have it in mine. There's a block at the top that begins with Begin WordPress and then goes down to End WordPress, and that's standard WordPress redirect stuff. But then below that, I've put in the code to deny access to wp-config directly. Now WordPress can still call it because it calls it on the server, but it makes it very difficult to write to it directly from the outside. Now typically this isn't a concern because WordPress doesn't allow people to write to it. But if somebody puts some malicious code into a plugin or something like that, then perhaps it could be done. So it can't hurt. The next thing I want to talk about is your database prefix. This is something I talked about during the install session. When you're installing WordPress, it wants to have a prefix for your database. The default is WP_. For many, many years, this was the standard for WordPress, and so hackers knew what your database tables were called. This made it a much easier target. If you make up something unique, then they don't know, and they have to try to figure it out. That makes it a lot harder. So it's strongly recommended that you change the prefix in some way. Another thing you should do is never use the username admin. Also for many years, this was the default in WordPress, and it was required, and it had full access to everything. This meant that if hackers could break the password for admin, they had everything. Several versions ago, WordPress made it so that admin was not required, and they suggested you stop using it altogether. It simply removes a target. Next, I'd like to look at a couple of plugins. I'm going to look at one called Rename wp-login.php. It's a pretty simple plugin. If we go to Settings, Permalinks, and go to the bottom, you'll see there's a new section there that wasn't there before this plugin. wp-login.php is the standard login page for WordPress. If you go to wp-admin while not logged in, it redirects you to wp-login.php. The hackers all know this, and so when they try to brute force attack your server, they just pound on this file. And you may have the most secure server in the world, and they will never get in, but they will make thousands of requests per second on this file and dramatically slow down your server. So this plugin allows you to change it. Right now, it's set to just /login. And then optionally, you can redirect any admin requests to the new login page if not logged in. If you don't do this, then they just get a 404 on the other one, which says to them, hey, I'm not running WordPress, otherwise I would have this file. And they go away and leave you alone. So I'm going to do Save Changes. Now I'm going to open up a new browser in privacy mode and go to my site. Just go to wp-admin. And here we have a 404. Let's try wp-login.php. Again, 404. So an automated script that's coming here looking for a WordPress login form is not going to find one and probably give up and go to another site. But if we simply go to /login, there we are with our normal login page. I personally had to do this on a number of the sites that I run, not because they were breaking in, but simply because they were hammering my server to death trying to break into that one page. So in one sense, this is also a performance plugin. The next one I'd like to look at is called Limit Login Attempts. This one makes it so that you can only try to log in a certain number of times before it blocks you. So if someone knows a username on your server and tries more than 4 times to log in, which can happen in about 1/4 of a second if a script is doing this, then it immediately blocks them and they can no longer log in. A user is blocked for 20 minutes, and 4 lockouts increase the lockout time to 24 hours, and then there are 12 hours until retries are reset, and you can change these settings. My site is actually behind a reverse proxy, and so I would want to check this. If you don't know what a reverse proxy is, you should check with your host to see if you're behind one. This allows cookie logins, and it can email you after 4 lockouts. It also logs the IP of the people who are logged out, so that if you have a recurring problem from a specific IP address, you can use another plugin to just block that IP address altogether. There we are. Now let's try logging in again. There, I tried to log in improperly. I have 3 attempts remaining. Try one more time. 2 attempts remaining. I'm not going to continue because I don't want to be locked out, but you can see how that works. There are actually hundreds of plugins that claim to provide added security for WordPress. Most of them do things you don't really need. WordPress handles security pretty well on its own. If security is a concern for you, then I strongly recommend you learn a lot more about it, not just from a WordPress standpoint, but web security in general. What happens when someone tries to attack your site? What attacks look like? What to do after a hack occurs? Things like that. This is an entire field unto itself, and people make their living by trying to make sites more secure. I do recommend you study it. It's good for you. It can make you a better developer and a better website owner.